Hey guys, Commissioner Zack Eichten here. Before we get into this episode of the Rathole, I just want to get out in front and say that the audio quality on this episode will be bad. Apparently, my new computer didn't connect quite up with my external microphone, and a lot of it is pretty garbled throughout. I did my best to stabilize that, but just wanted to give you a heads up that the audio quality will not be as good, and that should be fixed for future episodes. But for now, enjoy the episode. Hello, Pong Stars, and welcome to the Rathole. I'm your host, Commissioner Zack Eichten. In NFL news, the Vikings are a bad football team this year, and the Packers are a good football team this year. But in real news, let's talk about that. There was actually a COVID scare before the Falcons-Bears game on Saturday into Sunday of week 3 when Falcons cornerback A.J. Terrell was found to have a positive COVID test. After a vigorous round of contact tracing and testing, no other players or coaches tested positive for the Falcons, and the game was able to progress as scheduled, while Terrell was placed on the COVID reserve list. Unfortunately, on Tuesday of this week, news broke that 8 positive COVID tests came out of the Titans organization, meaning that both the Titans and Minnesota Vikings, both of their organizations, had to suspend in-person activities until all personnel can be tested and get those tests back and confirmed. It's unclear right now how this will impact week 4 games, including for the other teams involved, Houston and Pittsburgh. And it's unknown if players will be unavailable, if teams will be unavailable, and how the NFL will treat this, and how many players are going to be on the COVID reserve list. It's really up in the air right now. It could be treated as a bye. It could be treated as a forfeit. It could, unlikely, but it could. Or players could be placed on the COVID reserve list. It's definitely something to keep an eye on as things progress in week 4. There were a few injuries this week across the NFL, but not nearly as much as in week 2. Many of those still happened on Lucas's team, honestly, but 2 notable absences this week were top wide receivers Julio Jones and Devontae Adams. Both sat out this week after sustaining injuries in week 2. So let's get into the matchup recaps. In game 1, we had a shootout between Zach's Gluten Freaks and Brennan's Spring Chickens. The score ended at 160.74 to 147 in favor of the Freaks. For the Spring Chickens, Russell Wilson continues to be the cornerstone of this team, scoring over 30 points so far in each week of 2020. This week, he posted his best score so far at 36.8 points, throwing 315 yards and 5 passing touchdowns, as well as a 2-point conversion. Unfortunately for the Chickens, he was throwing to Tyler Lockett, the breakout star for week 3 on the Freaks team. Other notables for the Chickens were Dalvin Cook and Mike Evans. Cook put up his highest ever rushing total in a game against the Tennessee Titans on Sunday, scoring 24.9 fantasy points after running for 181 yards. Mike Evans only caught 2 passes for a total of 2 yards on the day. But luckily for him, both were touchdown passes from the 1-yard line, netting a 13.2-point score. Now, for the winning team, Zach's Gluten Freaks continues to be the team to beat. They've just been playing to their level of competition this year. This week, the Freaks were able to best the 4th highest scoring team by putting up 160.74 points. The 2 leaders on this team this week were Tyler Lockett, who got 100 yards and 3 touchdowns from the elite Russell Wilson, as well as the other elite quarterback in this matchup, Josh Allen, who, despite some naysayers about his output being earlier against weaker teams, was able to put up over 30 points against a stronger Rams defense. Zach is now 3-0 on the season and 8-7 against Brennan Swan all time. Now let's move on over to match number 2, which is the matchup between the Google team names and the newly renamed Glass Bones and Paper Skin, formerly known as the Diamond Hose. Now, obviously, Lucas and the Glass Bones do not have a full-strength team, given the numerous injuries that have occurred on this squad in 2020. Sam was able to nab a win and had it locked up going into Monday night, where he had Justin Tucker playing still. So let's take a look at Lucas's team first. Glass Bones had 2 players exit games early in week 3. John Brown, who only had 2 targets on the day that he did not catch, and posted a 0 score for the team before exiting with an injury, as well as Jared Cook, who exited after catching 2 passes for 21 total yards. These two players combining for 3.1 points definitely hurt the team this week. And they were unhelped by a low score again from now lead running back Joe Mixon, who, despite getting a big contract at the beginning of the year, has only gotten 23.7 points total on the year. Additionally, a low score from Matt Ryan made the good scores from Devin Singletary and Kenny Golladay not quite good enough to grab a win over the Google team names. The names, however, didn't have a great showing in week 3 either, as they've been doing well up until this point, and they were able to get a win, but definitely wasn't their best performance. Going into Monday night, they were barely projected over 100 points and finished with only 101.2 points on the week. Kyler Murray, the clear leader on this team, posted only 21.7 points after throwing 3 interceptions against Detroit in the Arizona loss. Starting backs Melvin Gordon and Jonathan Taylor combined for only 18.5 points, and Calvin Ridley finally had a game where he was held in check, scoring only 14.2 points as Matt Ryan struggled against the Bears. Of course, Julio Jones being out didn't help there, as all of the top cornerbacks were going to be covering Ridley and making that matchup a lot harder for him. DK Metcalf ended up with 17 points as well, instead of a possible 25-point game, because he decided to show off before getting into the end zone and was caught early, and a fumble was forced out of the back of the end zone from his hands, resulting in a -2 from that play rather than +6. Still great performance from Metcalf, though. Unfortunately, the name's performance was bad, but it was enough for a win. Against pretty much any other team this week, the names would have been handed their second loss on the season, but they lucked out with their matchup this week. Moving on to game number 3, we had the Revengers up against Not Trading Lamar. Going into the week, it was a toss-up between these two powerhouse teams on who would emerge with the victory. It seemed like Not Trading Lamar had a pretty good lead going after Thursday night, but it became evident that the injuries for both these teams were going to impact Not Trading Lamar more. The loss of DJ Chark and A.J. Brown before the games started was devastating enough, but the loss of Deontay Johnson during the game after only scoring 0.9 points is almost worse. It's hard to see players go down like that, especially when they're in the lineup for other injured players. Not Trading Lamar, like I said, had a great beginning on Thursday as James Robinson scored 27.9 points in the flex spot. A surprise move from the squad was the benching of traded-for player Todd Gurley, who posted 14.7 points on the bench, outscoring the injured David Montgomery. Montgomery did manage to come back in the game despite his little injury hiccup, unlike teammate Tariq Cohen, who is out for the season on an ACL injury. Unfortunately, Not Trading Lamar was unable to grab a victory over the high-scoring Revengers. The Revengers posted the third highest points on the week with 150.78 points. This comes without the play of Christian McCaffrey, Derrick Henry, Tyreek Hill, or Michael Thomas, as those players are all either injured or traded away now. Instead, this was done by a combination of other players that this team scraped together after the injuries and a big trade. Most importantly is new Revenger Alvin Kamara. Kamara scored 38.2 points for the Revengers this week, making that opening debut for this team really fun to watch. Additionally, Jerick McKinnon, the former Viking, started in San Francisco after the injuries to the running backs ahead of him, and came in with 15.2 points and a touchdown in that game. Michael Gallup and Dak Prescott connected nicely for this team finally, with Gallup posting 138 yards and for over 22 points this week, complementing Dak's strong performance as well. Overall, just a fantastic performance from most of the starters on this team. Make this team frightening. And remember, that score of 150 is without top wide receiver and top running back in Michael Thomas or Christian McCaffrey for this squad. Definitely watch out for the Revengers moving forward. Moving on to the fourth matchup, we had Tony Townsend and the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air against Drew Mahowald and the Gruesome Grinders. This matchup appeared to be close at one point, but then honestly, the Grinders just ran away with it. The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air has been known for a few things this year. Keepergate, a Googled team name, an unhinged desire to move up a few spots in round 2 of the draft at the expense of the rest of his draft spots. But nothing defines this team more than quarterback troubles, and that continued in week 3. Combined so far for the year, this team has put up 37.6 points at quarterback. Combined, that's less than the current single game high from Pat Mahomes at 40 points. The first 2 weeks, it was Drew Brees causing issues, and this week it was Gardner Minshew, who put up only 9.2 points against Miami. Meanwhile, Drew Brees did put up 23 on the bench. Bad time to bench him, I guess. Honestly, that just didn't bode well for the rest of the team, as the rest of the team just had average games. There's no specific name on this team that did well or did poorly. They hit what they were expected to, except for Minshew. They just weren't quite good enough against the top scoring team from week number 3. It was just an average week for the Fresh Prince, and one that resulted in a loss to the Gruesome Grinders. The Grinders made a big trade in the time leading up to this week, and it's already been working wonders for this team, getting them out of their 0-2 slump and grabbing the first win of the season for this squad, scoring a whopping 168.3 points, the highest score of the week. Derrick Henry finally had a game worthwhile for fantasy owners, posting 26 points against a bad Minnesota defense. This is actually the second time that Drew Mahowald has traded for Derrick Henry. So let's see how long he actually stays on the squad before we make any big judgments about how effective he is. And unsurprisingly to me, but probably surprisingly to team owner Drew Mahowald, Austin Eckler, who has been on the trading block, was able to post 25.8 points despite a mistimed bit of trickery where he could have gotten a lot more. Luckily, he didn't get charged with that fumble, and it went to Keenan Allen instead. Cooper Kupp also had a great game, finally, grabbing 21 points and his first touchdown of the year playing against Buffalo. Overall, a team that really has been struggling to win in close matchups, played like they wanted to be, a winning team like we all know the Gruesome Grinders can be. They outshone their expectations, grabbed a really solid score, and the Grinders win over the Fresh Prince. Finally, in the week 3 game of the week, John's Rock Popstas took on the Dog Sniffers. The Dog Sniffers walked away with a win after a tough-fought Monday Night Football game. John had finished on Sunday with 116.48 points, led by Nick Chubb and Allen Robinson, both with over 23 points on the day. Unfortunately, weak point getting from Aaron Jones and no Davante Adams put this Packer-packed party on the losing side of this week's matchup, but just barely. After this game, John has both the highest points for in the league through 3 weeks, as well as the highest points against through 3 weeks. Thomas's Dog Sniffers had a comeback finish on Monday night, with Kelsey, Andrews, and the Baltimore defense combining to get Thomas enough of a win by a mere 6.38 points. Excellent play from both Keenan Allen and Tyler Boyd put this team in a winning position as they combined for 41.2 points. Additionally, James Conner had a great game against Houston, rushing for over 100 yards and nabbing a touchdown. Thomas wins this match, which makes him the first ever recipient of Zach's Unmade Bed, the traveling trophy between the 2 roommates Zach has had individually in his lifetime. But not to worry, John, don't worry about it. It'll be up again in week 12 for the taking, so watch out for that. Thomas now leads the all-time record against John, 9-5. Now, during Monday Night Football, we did have a trade alert to come through. So let's head on over to that trade talks now between team owner Zack Eichten and Brennan Swan.
All right. Thank you to Brennan Swan for joining me for this episode of Trade Talks between our 2 teams. So when we're recording this, it is 10:26 on Monday, the 28th. We're about 20 minutes removed from the trade.
Yeah.
Brennan, how about you walk us through how we got to where we are with potentially league-defining trade of Tariq Cohen on IR for Peyton Barber?
Well, first thing you should know, it was a no-brainer.
Yeah, there was no brains involved. Confirmed.
Took a long, hard look at Tariq's history, like with kind of what he's done the last day or so with that torn ACL. I first thing knew he'd be okay to play on that busted up knee. So went ahead and I traded my guy Peyton Barber, averaging 0.8 points a game, for the Tariq Cohen. He's on IR, so he averages 0 a game. But just kind of figured, hey, let's put this guy in IR, and then we're not going to keep him next year, so we're just going to drop him anyway. Why don't we give up a back who may or may not have a good week this week, when I need running back depth. So really, when it comes down to it, it made sense.
So I texted you earlier today because the news broke that Chris Carson was going to be out for 1 to 2 weeks, most likely. Sent you a trade to get Carson back on my team, sent you David Johnson, and you shot back a counter trade of Tariq Cohen and Peyton Barber, and I just sit there and think, I like to inflate numbers in this league. Let's make another trade.
I mean, honestly, everybody needs to know that I only trade with you, and I'm just gonna keep trading with you, man. I mean, this is working.
I think this is week number 1 of this trade, and I think next week folks can make a correct assumption that Barber and Cohen are going to switch back to their original teams through another trade, and that's probably going to happen pretty much every week for the rest of the season, is my guess.
Yeah, and like you said, it's important to get those trade numbers up. I mean, we need to know that I'm here to do business, right? And I'm gonna get shit done. So like, I'm just telling you, man, I'm gonna be trading every week. Like Tariq's gonna be moving a little bit, and he's out for the year. So
when I think Brennan Swan, the first thing I think of is trade machine. So that just seems like a natural fit for you.
If you talk to most of the owners that we have in the league, they'll agree. I mean, when you look at me, I've made a ton of trades over the years. It's been crazy.
All right. Thanks for joining, Brennan, for this episode of Trade Talks. It's been fun. I think it's going to be a good trade for both of us in the long run. Definitely a high value set of players getting moved around, probably on par with the Drew and Noel trade from this year. So definitely on the same level. There's no debating or discussing that. That just is the truth. And thanks for being part of history.
Thanks for having me, Zach. Always a pleasure.
Thanks, Brennan. That is definitely a monumental trade in this league. History defining, probably the biggest trade in league history. But while we're talking about trades, I think right now is the best time for the Mahowald Minute.
Hey guys, episode 2 of the Mahowald Minute on the Rathole. The Rathole, I would say, is the best video series out there that covers the Pong Stars Fantasy Football League. I would say it's the best one. It's my go-to source for anything that I need to know about the Pong Stars League. But anyway, I want to talk about this trade veto period that we have and why it shouldn't be a thing. So, first of all, number one, I think we should be over the collusion, right? I think we're all adults here. We've all played fantasy football long enough. We're all mature enough to understand the process of making your team better and the right way to do it and the wrong way to do it. And I think at this point, the one person we would have maybe been scared about in this scenario is Tony. But of course, after Keepergate, I feel like we've scared him pretty straight. So there's no worries there. And if something were to happen that's egregious, that's out of line, that really needs to be fixed, why can't we just send the players and picks back to their original teams like nothing ever happened, right? So number 2 thing I want to...
Some cutting words there from Drew Mahowald. But now that we have that out of the way, let's take a look at the standings through 3 weeks. Right now, the Gluten Freaks are in first place at 3-0 on top of the standings with 427.9 points, and they are the only 3-0 team remaining in the league. In number 2, we have John and the Rock Plopstas at 2-1 with the highest points for by about 7 points over Zach at 434.46 points. Next up, we have a bit of a drop off to the number 3rd ranked spot where we have Sam and the Google team names at 2-1 as well. Definitely outshining expectations on the year so far with 375.74 points. Next up, we have Thomas and the Dog Sniffers. Again, completely baffling people with the expectations at 2-1 with 343.48 points. Finally, rounding up the top half of the rankings, we have Josh and Not Trading Lamar, also at 2-1 at 320.54 points after a couple of close victories so far this year. Coming in, beginning the bottom half of the league, at least in standings, is Drew Mahowald at 1-2 with the 3rd highest points for total at 413.22 points. Bad matchup luck putting Drew at 1-2. Speaking of bad matchup luck, we have Brennan Swan also at 1-2 with the 4th highest points for total at 398.1. Definitely tough to see the Spring Chickens down here at number 7. At number 8, we have the 1-2 team, the Revengers, posting the 5th highest points for total at 395.92 points. We know that these 3 teams are definitely in a position where with the amount of points for total that they have right now, could be winning any tiebreakers. So you want to get those scores up, folks. Coming in at 9th place, we have a bit of a drop off in points for 1-2. Tony Townsend at 306.96 points. Tony won a first win in week 1, had a tough loss in week 2, and got blown out in week 3. So hopefully that's not a bad trajectory for him and he can get that back on track. Finally, we have newly renamed Glass Bones and Paper Skin, Lucas Lawrence's squad at 0-3, coming in at 10th place at 261.9 points. Tough loss on a lot of key players for these first 3 weeks. Definitely brought Lucas down, but that is what it is through week 3. Now, I know what everybody is thinking. What's on everybody's mind right now? And it is, what are the chances that teams who start strong versus struggle at the beginning actually make playoffs? And that's a great question to ask. So let's actually head on over to the fun fact of the week. This week, the fun fact of the week is examining how teams who start 3-0 and 0-3 finish the regular season. So I'll be examining this from a position of how likely it is to make playoffs, not final position in regular season or postseason, just making playoffs based on the data from our league's history. Over the league history, 5 teams have started 0-3. Those teams were Zach in 2015, Zach in 2016, Zach in 2017, and then John and Tony in 2019. So of those 5 teams, 3 of them ended up making playoffs. That's right. Even if you start 0-3 based on our league data, you still have a 60% chance of making playoffs in this league. So that's definitely a neat stat and something that hopefully will be a bit of help for Lucas as he moves forward and having a little bit of hope for his team. But I want to look at the reverse. Has anybody ever started 3-0 and not made playoffs? So let's take a look at that. Over the league history, 6 teams in our league have started 3-0. They were Thomas in 2016, Thomas in 2019, Lucas in 2016, Lucas in 2017, Brennan in 2018, and Zach in 2018. All 6 of those teams went on to make the playoffs. So, man, it would be pretty embarrassing to be the one to mess up that perfect record. So pressure is definitely on for the Gluten Freaks. Now, before we move into the interview for this week, we did have 2 positions actually in week 3 get new point leaders for the single season or single week stats. And that was in defense and quarterback. So let's talk about the quarterback first. Patrick Mahomes scored 40 points for the Gruesome Grinders, which has taken the spot of Dak Prescott from 39.8 points on the year so far. Congrats to Mahomes and the Gruesome Grinders on their new leader position. And the next one is for the defense, where the Indianapolis Colts scored 26 points for the Gluten Freaks, outscoring Brennan Swan on defense somehow, which was definitely impressive. So thank you to the Colts for having a great defensive game. This week, I had the opportunity to interview Josh Polingo, the man, the myth, the legend, and the current league runner-up. So let's head on over into that interview now.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, so I'm in 5 fantasy football leagues as of this year. So I am invested in, there's a lot going on. As you can tell, I'm not at all a trader. I tend to not trade ever. So
let's get in that. So we'll come back to how you're doing, because now that I press record, I'll actually get that. But yeah, trades are a big part of this league this year for some reason. You're actually the only person who has made only one trade so far this year. What's your quick initial reaction to that?
Yeah, I would say my fantasy football strategy from even high school, I rarely traded. I was all about the draft. Unfortunately, a little bit with my keepers. We're a little shady there with Leonard Fournette, but I do enjoy the idea of people sending me trades. So I know Noel sends a lot of trades. I've told him no every single time.
It's probably smart.
And then John Stevens, we text a little bit. I probably am on the market for a wide receiver, with a couple of my wide receivers now currently out. So I'm out there. I have some trust issues when it comes to fantasy football, though. So every time I make a trade, I need to be pretty confident. So my good friend there, Tony, I felt pretty good with that trade back early on. So
yeah, that's a great. I think that trade worked well for you. But so tell us a bit about yourself. Like, where are you at these days? Where you working? Still living in Norwood?
So yeah, I live in Norwood, Young America. For you folks that maybe not know what that is, it's west of the cities, about 30 miles. So specifically at home for the most part, working at Optum. If you don't know what that is, it's United Health Group, dealing a lot actually currently with COVID-19 testing and the vaccine. So have a lot of, I guess, secret information with that the world is relying on. So pretty significant stuff. But again, I love working from home because I can wear my get up. I am wearing pants, but sweatpants. I know a lot of you folks, you guys dress up pretty heavily for these calls, but that's not my style.
Well, yeah, no, I'm taking this way too seriously, so that's why I dress up this much. So
and I value that a lot.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit more about your trades then. So you made a trade with Tony right at the draft this year. So I think it was probably the fastest trade in league history post-draft. Was you ended up with Todd Gurley, and you shipped off your rookie running back that you had drafted in DeAndre Swift. You guys traded a few picks back and forth, but how do you think that trade has worked out for you so far?
So far it has been overall pretty good. Where I have been pleasantly surprised is a guy named James Robinson. I love him for Jacksonville. So right after the draft, I wasn't really excited about where my running back situation was. Straight up DeAndre Swift. Yeah, I feel like I got a steal with that. DeAndre Swift probably won't play much. So I feel good about that. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I knew I needed 4 running backs. So Todd Gurley definitely helped me out there.
Yeah, so when coming into this year, you're obviously coming off a really hot year. You finished second place regular season, second place in the championship match to Noel last year. Does that sort of like paint any sort of picture for your team? Do you got to live up to expectations of last year coming into this year now?
Yeah, I would say myself as a pretty competitive human. So whether or not that's playing golf, playing ping pong, playing fantasy football, I love to win. So the only aspect of this is I can't really control what they do. So I view it as a law of averages, as many of you know. So you pick the guys that have had stable years over the past, and just hopefully they stay healthy. So to that point, yeah, I'm still a little upset with the loss to Noel, but Noel's a good guy. He's all right. So he has a really good team. Now he has Kamara, so he's doing well.
Yeah, he's got a great team. But I like your team a lot too. I think especially after getting Gurley on the squad as opposed to Swift, that really sets you up well for this season. So far, you've gone 2-1 on the season. You lost to Knoll just this past week in a game. Everybody going into it, at least in the Pick'em segment, thought it was going to be a toss-up, and it looked like it was going to be that way for a little while. What lineup adjustments are you going to be making moving forward to make sure that same thing doesn't happen?
Yes. So yeah, to backtrack there, I felt pretty good going into that week, but really, Lamar Jackson is my go-to, and then I had some key injuries in the wide receiver spot. So really was excited after James Robinson just tore it up on Thursday. Felt really good. I was almost gonna, I don't like to shit talk unless I win.
Right.
So I felt, but overall, I don't see a lot of adjustments happening. Really, this week I do have a fellow matchup with you. So
Yes.
pretty excited. This is probably where Lamar will get 6 touchdowns and probably rushing touchdowns. So pretty excited.
Let's talk about Lamar. Well, I have Lamar in a different league, so you know what? If I lose because Lamar runs for 6 touchdowns, I'll take it. That's fine. I'll accept that loss. But last year you drafted Lamar in the 9th round. Was that just a lucky pick, or were you targeting him? Or you had a good feeling about Lamar Jackson?
Yeah, no. To that point, in hindsight, it's pretty crazy that he dropped that far. But really, anytime you get a rushing quarterback, you're doing pretty well, and the guy can throw the ball like a cannon. So Kyler Murray, a bunch of those guys, Pat Mahomes is just insane. But especially in a dynasty type of, you need a solid quarterback. So yeah, I was pinpointing him from early on, but if he dropped, I was going to hopefully find someone else. But
so you changed your name and not trading Lamar. Yep. Is that firm, or am I going to be able to sneak in one of these days with the?
No, again, back to our conversation. Yeah, about trading. No, he's probably not leaving my team unless he gets injured or something, and you want to play a long play on that. Sure.
All right. Well, when he gets injured, let's talk Josh Allen for Lamar. But until then, let's take a look at your keepers from last year. I think going into the season, the consensus from the armchair experts was you had probably the hardest time in selecting keepers based off your team. Everybody was playing very well at the end of last year. You had great guys, and you ended up cutting DJ Chark and David Montgomery. But you picked them up in the first 2 rounds. How are you feeling about that sort of core 7 guys that you were able to keep on your team going into this year?
Yeah, so without a doubt, I mean, you're going to keep Lamar Jackson. You're going to keep Ezekiel Elliott. At the time, it felt like Fournette was a good option. Again, can't go back, and I'm not to be the guy that complain or try to switch rules like some of you folks. So that is what it is. Brown from Tennessee, really good quarterback or wide receiver with the quarterback Tannehill. But I felt really good about my team last year. So that's why I got Montgomery back and Chark, who, if he is playing, he does pretty well. So overall, top 7 guys I know can produce, and now just gifted with my good friend James Robinson. My team, and again, you just need to be in the playoffs, and I snuck away with 2 wins. So, yeah.
Yeah. So you kept Leonard Fournette because of our keeper rules. The news hadn't broke yet that he was just getting unceremoniously cut from Jacksonville. Had the news broke earlier, would Leonard Fournette even be on your team right now?
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
And honestly, yeah, in hindsight, looking back with even Big Ben, I did have Juju Smith on my team as well. So I probably would have kept Schuster. Again, Chark and them not. But again, I look on the positive side of it. That's when in the draft, I also looked at James Robinson very heavily because I was pretty invested in him. So I knew I wanted to take him even if it was earlier than I wanted.
Yeah, and that clearly, he's been playing very well so far, so that's paying off for you. All right, so you started the season off 2-0, and I want to talk about your second win here, week 2 against Tony.
Big win.
You won by the smallest ever margin in league history with 0.78 points. Tell us about that feeling. I've never been in a matchup quite that close, so I want to know how you were feeling on Monday night after the final score.
Yeah, so obviously after Sunday, I felt almost it was impossible because you think of Drew Brees. Drew Brees is typically a pretty good quarterback. But then again, just thinking of overall Tony's team, really would have been disappointing to lose that game, especially if I want to be up with the Noel and John and even yourself with some of these good high teams. I can't lose something like that. But then at the end of the game, though, I was feeling a garbage touchdown. I felt like it was going to happen, but overall, it went as well as I wanted. And to win, that would have been just if he would have rushed for a yard or so, 10 yards, whatever. But it felt really good. But again, I wasn't all that excited because my team has to do better in order to beat everyone else. So I will take that sneaky win.
So you also have had the largest ever victory margin with, let me verify before I say it, 113.76 in last year. Which one of those felt better, the big blowout or the close matchup?
Always a blowout.
Okay.
I love blowing out, and I feel like my team is ready to when Lamar and Zeke. Yeah, they're more of the after Thanksgiving they get going. So pending no COVID. Yeah, my team's gonna destroy everyone. Yeah,
and I'm scared for that. We face off again in week 13, and I told John this, right after the draft, looking at all the teams, I went, dang it, I'm going to be facing Josh, and we're going to be battling for that last playoff spot. I just know it. So far, we've both done very well, so maybe not, but I always get nervous looking at those end of year matchups. You're a formidable team out there.
That's good. I like that you're already scared for week 13. I like that.
Well, last year, week 13, you let me down. You faced John, couldn't pull out a victory, which meant I missed playoffs because you couldn't win. Yeah. So I only assume the worst case scenario will happen in week 13 from you again when you beat me to kick me. So that's just the trend so far. A single data point always makes a trend. That's just the way that life works. So
yeah, you might even. I was just say you might have Lamar by that time. That's a ways away.
That'd be great. I would love it. You have to change your name to Trading Lamar once he's on the block, so I know for sure.
That's exactly what it will be. Yes.
Okay. Last year in 2019, you scored 31% of your points from your running backs. And this year, that number is actually closer to 37% of your points through week 3, which is an improvement from last year, obviously. Do you attribute that to your running back core just being better this year? Like you have Robinson, you have Gurley, or is that because your wide receivers have been getting injured? Or do you think it's a combination?
Yeah, that's an extremely awesome fact there, Zach. So I would say a lot to my running back core being pretty solid. But then, I don't know. That's a good question. I didn't really think that I was gonna get nailed on a 4%. You said so. It was 41% and now 37%.
Yeah. So 31% last year. And
31.
31. And now it's 37.
So I'm improving. Oh, I'm improving.
You've improved. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Absolutely. Yeah, I was catching that backwards. Oh, yeah. No. Honestly, James Robinson, pretty clutch first 2 weeks. So, again, we're only 3 weeks into the season, so I'm expecting my team, my wide receivers have not been that solid. So once they bring up their A game, then hopefully that number will come down.
Yeah. So the story of the season really has been injuries, and a lot of talk goes into the group message and on Twitter about the injuries that Lucas has. But I think you have also been pretty heavily impacted by injuries so far. DJ Chark has missed time. AJ Brown, Chris Godwin. Your top guys, your top 3 receivers have all missed time. Deontay Johnson got a concussion after, I think it was one catch for 4 yards or something like that last week. Are you going to be looking towards the waiver wire trades, or are you just hoping that these guys get healthy to shore up that wide receiver position?
Yeah, and this week's going to tell a lot. I know Brown has potential to be playing, and as well with Chark, so it's really going to rely on that. Otherwise, I will be open. I'm going to need a trade for a wide receiver. So I don't really trust the waiver wire, and again, my strategy for that is I hold on to my dollars until the end when everyone else is out of their dollars, so then I can pick up the guy on the end of the year. So giving away some advice there, but no, I probably will be looking, and again, I have Juju Smith that I would like to go after. So.
All right, John, there you go. Let him know that Josh is in the mood for a trade. Got to get those numbers up. Got to bump up the the trade numbers for the year. Looking at across the league, which of the other teams do you think that you would just wholesale trade on? If you could have one other team in the league, whose team would you take?
I'm gonna take Noel's team.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, for many reasons, and then the next would probably be John Stevens' team. I like what he is pretty consistent, and I enjoy that. And yeah, I think both are great options moving forward. So as we're wrapping it up here, we do this every week. It's my favorite part of the interview, end of the interview here. So would you rather question?
I love it.
All right. Before we fully sign off, I wish you luck in this season. Not enough to beat me, but
I got 2 more matchups against you. I feel good.
You know what? If you go, what you've lost one time, you can go 10-3. I don't care, as long as both those other losses are against me. Good luck on the rest of the season. But here's our would you rather question. Would you rather have AJ Brown and Chris Godwin completely healthy for the rest of the year, or would you rather Leonard Fournette be the only running back in Tampa Bay?
Wow, I love this question. Due to my James Robinson and the rest of my crew, I need Godwin and my Brown to start producing. So I'm taking that. Good question, though. My God, you're ready.
I'm glad that you had an answer right away. I'm taking a look over here at my wide receivers to see who's available for you. So
yeah,
check out some trades coming your way. But,
good.
Thanks for joining us, Josh. Super appreciate your time, and we'll catch you soon.
Yeah, thank you, Zach. You've been a crazy commissioner, and I love that. And thank you for making these videos. The fact that you have this time and you get into it, I know all of us appreciate that. So thank you.
And I appreciate all of you. So catch you soon.
See you.
Thanks for a great interview, Josh. Like I said in the interview, good luck every week you aren't playing me. So let's take a look now at rankings for where we're at moving into week 4. Again, here's just some nice calming music for you to enjoy while you wonder what the heck is going on in some people's heads when they're doing these rankings. From those rankings. Hope that you're able to stay calm when you look at those numbers. So let's head on into the matchup previews for week 4. This is going to be quite the week 4 matchups, in my opinion. In game number 1, we have the number 1 ranked Gluten Freaks versus the tied for 6th ranked Not Trading Lamar. both these teams will be looking to their all-star quarterbacks to get the edge this week. It's Allen versus Jackson. My initial reaction is that whichever QB does better will probably win the game for their squad. But the rest of the talent on these squads is just too large to overlook. The Freaks will need the running backs on this team to show up in week 4. And not trading Lamar, will be looking to find any healthy receivers before this matchup begins. This one is really going to come down to the wire. All time, these two teams have only faced off against each other one time, where Josh put the smackdown on Zack 130.92 to 118.34. In game number 2, we have the other tied for 6th ranked Google team names against the number 8 Dog Sniffers. Both teams have, in my opinion, vastly outperformed the expectations people had for their teams on this year so far. What this team is really going to come down to is whether or not the pair of tight ends in Travis Kelce and Mark Andrews can take on the wide receiver duo of Calvin Ridley and DK Metcalf. The running backs on these teams, in my estimation, are approximately equal, kind of average, so they're probably not going to be the difference makers. The dynamic duos of receivers will be the key players in week 4. All time, Thomas leads 11-6 against Sam with a points for lead of 1,717.26 to 1,629.1. In game number 3, we have the number 3 ranked Revengers against the number 10 ranked Glass Bones and Paper Skin. In the battle of injured-ridden teams, who can snag victory? Well, the betting odds are probably on for the team who's averaging 132 points per game versus the team averaging 87.3 points per game. So that's probably on the Revengers. Dak used to have the record for quarterback score this year, just barely getting beat out by 0.2 points in this previous week. And Alvin Kamara has been playing extremely well and almost took over that lead running back score in the last week. The depth on the team for the Revengers is astounding, and it's definitely going to be hard for Glass Bones to take on. Glass Bones and Paper Skin started out the season, which, in my opinion, one of the best amount of depth in the league, which each week has just been getting whittled away through injury after injury after injury. If Joe Mixon can reach the end zone, that would definitely help, and hopefully getting starting wide receiver Kenny Golladay back, as well as potentially starting tight end George Kittle in week 4 would be huge for this squad. The heavy favorite is the Revengers, though, especially based on history, where Noel leads Lucas 3-1 all time with a points for lead of 470.92 to 401.32. In game number 4, we have the number 2 ranked Rock Popstas versus the number 9 ranked Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. In the battle of fantasy football, this is a very much a symbolic game regarding these two teams. They were the two biggest protagonists of Keepergate. John will be looking. You thought I forgot. You thought I forgot about Keepergate. You thought wrong. Watching you. John will be looking to get his team back on track after a surprise upset win by Thomas and the Dog Sniffers over him in week 3. And Tony and the Fresh Prince could provide that adjustment. The central challenge for the Rock Popstas will be getting the secret sauce from weeks 1 and 2, major points from Packer players, back into the mix. Week 3 had Devontae Adams out and Aaron Jones held to 15 points. Meanwhile, Tony and the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air have had successes by, I don't know. They must have paid some sort of witch to put a hex on his opponents that they just do bad enough for him to stay competitive. He must have missed a payment back in week number 3, but he'll be sure to get that figured out by week number 4 facing the Rock Popstas. Additionally, getting a quarterback that will actually, play better for this team is key. Maybe it's Breeze, maybe it's Minshew, maybe it's Mitchell Trubisky. Tony, don't believe those reports and rumors that he's not starting anymore. He could be the guy. You got to trust me on that one. This will either be a blowout or be decided by less than 5 points. There's really no in between when these two teams are involved. These two have faced off only once before, where John won 111.42 to 81.5. Now, let's head on over to the Pong Stars Game of the Week. Pong Stars Game of the Week, we have the number 4 ranked Gruesome Grinders versus the number 5 ranked Spring Chickens. These two former roommates face off in a hotly contested game. Both of these teams have honestly just been cursed with abysmal matchup luck this year, both going 1-2 through 3 weeks, despite having some of the highest points for totals so far. Brendan has finished in the top 4 in 2 weeks that he's lost for points, and Drew has lost by single digits in both of his losses so far this year. Both teams will be using this game to get their team back on track and get back to 500 on the season. Now, the Spring Chickens will be relying on Russell Wilson heavily due to the running back woes that this team is facing. Thankfully, Chris Carson isn't seriously injured. He'll probably only be out for 1 to 2 weeks. But with injuries to Raheem Mostert, trading away Peyton Barber, and just not having any depth on this team, the Spring Chickens could be in trouble, especially if Dalvin Cook, coming off one of his best ever rushing games, despite his loss, is unable to play due to being quarantined for COVID exposure. As of recording, Brennan Swan has no available running backs to play in week 4. We'll look to the waiver wire to see how that turns out. Meanwhile, the Gruesome Grinders have finally seen the value of Derrick Henry after getting him back in a trade after trading him away last year, as well as the value from Austin Eckler, despite the clear hatred of starting him from owner Drew Mahowald. Unfortunately, Derrick Henry might not play this week. It's yet to be determined if the Titans will even be able to have a game based on their COVID exposure. This will absolutely be a battle of the running backs, depending on who Drew even has available, who Brennan even has available. Whoever's able to get the ground game going will probably win this matchup. All time, Brennan leads 2-1 when these two teams meet and leads the points for race 375.6 to 318.92. Now that we have the matchup previews out of the way, let's head over to the Pong Stars Pick'em.
Welcome, folks, to the Pong Stars Pick'em. This is week number 4 of Pong Stars Pick'em, but it is the first time that all 6 of us have been together at the same time. Thank you to the other 5 of you for joining me today. I'm looking forward to our discussion on who is going to win each of the matchups this week. Let's start with matchup number 1, which is the Gluten Freaks versus Not Trading Lamar. Zach versus Josh, a budding rivalry between 2 really great teams, high-powered offenses. The number 1 ranked team in the Gluten Freaks versus a lesser ranked team in Not Trading Lamar. Gluten Freaks are finally ranked number 1 again.
Okay, we said less than 25 minutes. Wrap it up.
And feeling real good versus Not Trading Lamar, who lost last week. So let's go with Sam Olson first. Who are you going to take in this big battle?
I have got the Gluten Freaks, and they are also my lock this week. I think that with Josh Jacobs and Josh Allen, there's just no stopping this team, at least for the foreseeable future.
Alrighty, we're just going to go around the horn. So Thomas, you're up next. Who are you taking in the Gluten Freaks versus Not Trading Lamar?
In this contest, I've got to say the Gluten Freaks. They've just been dominant every week, and Not Trading Lamar.
All right, I don't know if I'd go that far, but let's go over to Drew then. Drew, Gluten Freaks or Not Trading Lamar?
Gluten Freaks for me. Not Trading Lamar is just too banged up right now. Zach is getting the best injury luck I've ever seen. So let's go with Gluten Freaks.
Also responded by that. Yes, thank you. Thank you, injury gods. Leave me alone, please. And we'll go over to Noel then. Noel, Not Trading Lamar or the Gluten Freaks?
I got Not Trading Lamar.
Ooh. All right. Any explanation for that?
Short and sweet.
All right. There you go. John Stevens, we're over to you. The Gluten Freaks are Not Trading Lamar.
I'm also taking Not Trading Lamar in the upset this week. I just don't think that the Gluten Freaks are going to sustain this high-scoring that they've seen the last couple of weeks. We'll see if I'm wrong.
All right, and then I will go last. I too am taking the Gluten Freaks to win over not trading Lamar. I agree that they're just a little too banged up, and I hope I can continue to perform well. Let's go to matchup number. What? And not get injuries. That too. Let's go over into matchup number 2 here, where we have the Revengers versus newly renamed Glass Bones and Paper Skin, Lucas Lawrenson's team. Let's start with Thomas this time. Thomas, who are you taking, Noel or Lucas?
Unfortunately, I've got to take the Revengers here. Specifically, the confounding reason here would definitely be, as his team name so correctly identifies, he has no one. They're all gone. All the injuries. The Revengers has Kamara. It's no contest. That's my lock.
Yeah, that is your lock. Okay, good to know. Drew Mahowald, let's go to you.
Yeah, the Revengers are also my lock. Shout out to Alvin Kamara for putting up 1,000 points last week. But Glass Bones and Paper Skin, I mean, that tells the story. I'm just looking at the lineup right now, and you just got it's kind of gross. So, Noel, dude, if the Revengers don't win, man, it might be time to throw in the towel on the season.
All right, Noel.
Thanks for the advice, Drew.
Noel, we'll go to you. Glass Bones or the Revengers for you?
Yeah, as Drew said, Lucas has been destroyed by injuries, so I don't think anybody's picking him this year, so I got the Revengers and myself.
All right, up to you, John. John, the Revengers or Glass Bones?
Glass Bones in my lock of the week. I will probably be taking the team against Lucas as my lock of the week for the foreseeable future. Just too many injuries for Lucas until they come back. So hopefully Galladay can continue his success last week. That's just not going to be enough to take down Noel.
All right, so you're taking Noel. All right, good to know. And I will take Noel as well, and we will head over to Sam. Glass Bones or the Revengers?
That one's easy, the Revengers.
And that appears to be a sweep for the Revengers on the Pick'em. Let's go to matchup number 3, where we have the Rock Plopstas versus the Fresh Prince of Hilaire. Let's start with Drew this time. Drew, got the Rock Plopstas or the Fresh Prince?
You're gonna have to stop saying it like that for one.
That's the only way to say it.
Yeah, I don't know how else you would want me to say it. That's his name.
Anyway, I got the Rock Plopstas.
Okay.
Sorry, the who?
What do you mean?
Who did you pick?
Yeah,
the Rock Plopstas.
The Rock Plopstas.
The Rock
Plopstas. That's the Rock Plopstas. No, Tony's team sucks. That's my only reasoning.
I'm out. I like it.
Telling them how it is.
Yeah, let's go then to Noel Teigen.
Yeah, I also got the Rock Plopstas this week. Yeah, as Drew put it, John's team is far better than Tony's, so it's an easy pick. I think nope, never mind. We're good.
John, let's head up to you then on your own matchup.
Yep, John, Rock Plopstas.
I am also gonna take the Rock Plopstas in my lock of the week. I think it's easy to always lock against Lucas, but I think it's also easy to lock against Tony this year. And I'm going to be
always
choosing between those two in my locks pretty much every week this year. John has a great team, number 2 team in the league right now, so I'm excited to see where this goes. Sam,
number 1 by points for.
Well, by 5 points. All right, cool. All right, Sam, you got the Rock Plopstas, or do you got the Fresh Prince?
I've got the Rock Plopsters.
Okay.
Boo.
Hard R. Calm down.
Yeah, really? The hard R? That is not necessary.
In this climate, oof.
Oof, big oof.
It's like 60 degrees outside.
Thomas, down to you. You got the Rock Plopstas, or do you have the Fresh
I've got to say, I do in fact have the Rock Plopstas to win it here. Just the superior team that we got, eh?
And that is the second sweep on the week for picks. So thank you to the Rock Plopstas for making that easy. Let's head to matchup number 4, which is the Googled team names versus the dog sniffers. Noel, let's start with you. The Google team names or the dog sniffers for you?
Yeah, so I got the dog sniffers as my lock this week. I got an upset happening.
All right. That's great to know. All right, John Stevens, you got the dog sniffers or the Google team names?
I also am taking the dog sniffers in an upset, and I think it's because Thomas is channeling his inner Lucas from last year, where teams just play like shit against him. So I'm projecting that Sam's going to have a slow week on no fault of his own, but purely because he's playing Thomas.
All right, I'm going to go with the favorite here, the Google team names. I've been in the Google team names camp since week 2. So I think he's going to pull one out over the dog sniffers. Sam, we're going over to your matchup next. Who do you got, Google team names or the dog sniffers?
I'm not going to bet against myself. Google team names.
All right, good to know. Down to Thomas. Who do you got in your own matchup?
I will bet against myself. I got the Google team names to win. And I just think that I think that his team is boomer bust, and I think based on his matchups, I think most of his players are going to have a good week. Especially if the Houston game gets moved. That's a high-scoring player on my team who, admittedly, has not been performing well, but has consistently scored me double-digit points, which I cannot say for most of my team. And that's my reasoning there. I don't have a solid backup.
Betting against yourself worked last week, so maybe it'll work.
Hey, we're not trying to channel that, right? We're not trying to reverse psychology that.
Drew, let's head over to you. Google team names or the dog sniffers?
Got the Google team names in a slim one.
All righty. Let's head to our Pong Stars game of the week, which was posted as well on our Twitter account. And we have results from that poll to see who the Twitter folks are going to pick. But let's start with John Stevens then. Between Brennan Swan's Spring Chickens or Drew Mahowald's Gruesome Grinders, who do you got this week?
Yeah, I got Drew. Like Brennan mentioned earlier in the week, he's got a lot of problems at running back. So unless he can make some big acquisitions or trades this week, I think it's going to be a blowout, to be honest.
I am going to take the Gruesome Grinders as well. If for some reason the Minnesota game does get moved, Brennan having literally nobody on his roster that can fill a running back spot, except for whoever he is able to get on waivers, it's got to be the Gruesome Grinders. Sam, let's head over to you.
I've got the Gruesome Grinders. I mean, I like Brennan's quarterback in Russell Wilson, but it's just not enough if you don't have a running back in the game. So, Gruesome Grinders.
Thomas, we'll head over to you next. Gruesome Grinders or the Spring Chickens?
Definitely got to take the GGs here, my man. Brennan's team is just shit without the running back. So.
All right, good to know. Drew Mahowald in your own matchup. Who do you got?
I think it's funny that Sam pointed out Russell Wilson as a quarterback, and I even have the better fantasy quarterback on my team. I'm going to go with the Gruesome Grinders, even though I don't actually have a tight end on my team right now. And also, Derrick Henry might not play this week, but who cares? I'm picking my team.
All right, and then finally, Noel Teigen, last pick of the day here. Who do you got?
I'm going with the upset again. I got the big unicorn man himself, the Spring Chickens, Brennan Swan.
Questionable call for a team with no running backs, but
hey, there's some inside stuff going on.
Trade rumor.
Twitter account, check the rumors. But that's great to know. Thanks to everybody for playing this week. Just as a quick rules clarification, those locks do count for double points, so you do get 2 points instead of 1 for if your locked team wins. So make sure to use that to your advantage as we play. Right now, we have quite the interesting leaderboard.
5 for 5 last week, baby.
We have a tie for first place right now with 10 points through 3 weeks. We have Noel and Sam tied for first. We have a 3-way tied for second place between Zach, Thomas, and John at 9 points. And then we have Drew in third place by himself with 8 points. But we're only through 3 weeks. We got 10 to go. Those locks make a difference. So plenty of time to.
It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Absolutely. Fun fact, not the fun fact of the week, but just a fun fact. Drew is the only person who missed his lock last week. So that did.
Oh, yeah, hate to see it.
Yep, and it was on me. Apologies to Drew.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Anytime,
Guys,
Drew.
get you guys ready to go on Sundays, man. Come on.
I know. Darren Waller, I'll tell you what, man. That guy, I don't think he was even in the stadium.
All right.
Yeah, you know what? Just before we leave, that's why you pick the best tight ends. That's all I got to say. Tight end, crucial position.
Trade me.
Mark Andrews had 3.5 points last night.
More than Darren Waller.
All right. Thanks,
Groundhog.
everybody. We will see you next week for the Pong Stars Pick'em.
Thanks, Pick'em Pickers, and good luck to the teams that I chose this week. It's very important to me that I win something. Thanks for tuning in, folks. Obviously, I appreciate all of you a lot. And I wanted to address a few things just before we move too far on. And the first one is the sign-off I chose for the show way back when I first started up the Rathole. At the time, we were taking votes for what was going on in the league every once in a while. And also, it is an election year, which nobody can forget. So I did choose to use remember to vote as my sign off, hoping to get in your heads that you actually do remember. But I am realizing that I should probably make sure that you all know how to register and how to vote. I assume you do, but let's just make sure. In Minnesota, you can go to mnvotes.org to register to vote. You can request an absentee ballot, track that ballot, check your registration. Or if you'd rather vote in person, you can find your polling place, as well as look at a sample ballot before you vote. In South Dakota, you can go to sdsos.gov to get all that voting information that you may need as well. I know that everybody in Wisconsin has already voted. Good work. To encourage you to vote, to give you an incentive, the economist in me likes to give incentives. Everybody who tells me they vote by election day, send me a pic of your sealed ballot or your I voted sticker, or literally just tell me if you already sent it in, tell the truth, that you voted. You'll get an extra $5 fab from the commissioner here. Speaking of voting and commissioners, though, not in real politics, there is going to be a new elected position in the Pong Stars Fantasy Football League. And I'm asking that some of you step up to run for the title of Assistant Commissioner of the league. It's not going to be an abundance of work. You won't need to do anything super specific. It's mostly a symbolic title, so I can assign commissioner status in the app in case, for whatever reason, I ever get locked out, somebody can help. Or in the case I'm ever involved in a league dispute, somebody else can hold the gavel. So folks who are interested, shoot me a text by noon on Saturday, October 3rd. I'll be creating a ballot for folks to be able to vote on. I'm hoping to have this role filled by the start of week 6. And if there's more than one person who wants to run for the position of assistant commissioner, we will have folks be able to make campaign ads and potentially even have a debate. Very exciting stuff. I'm looking forward to the election. And I hope that all of you will consider running for the position of assistant commissioner. Like I said, shoot me a text by noon on October 3rd if you're interested. That is all we have for this week on the Rathole. I'm your host, Commissioner Zack Eichten. And remember to vote.